I always sat at the same place at the Thanksgiving table, 2 chairs down from my parents, across from my brother. It wasn't assigned, not officially, but it had become a quiet tradition, like everything else in our family. I noticed patterns because my life had been built on them. Work hard. Stay loyal. Don't complain. Wait your turn. I was 28 that year, and I had already given more of my life to our family business than anyone cared to count. While my friends moved cities, built careers, fell in love, and failed loudly, I stayed. I stayed late in the office when everyone else left. I stayed silent when my name was left off paperwork. I stayed hopeful when promises were vague and praise was always directed elsewhere. The business had been my second home since I was 16. After school, I'd sweep floors, file invoices, answer phones. In college, I worked weekends and holidays, unpaid most of the time, because my father said, "It's for the family." When my brother joined years later, fresh out of business school, he was welcomed like a hero returning from war. I trained him. I corrected his mistakes. I smiled while my father clapped him on the back and called him a natural leader. That Thanksgiving morning, I woke up early, as usual. I helped my mother cook, chopped vegetables, stirred sauces, listened to her complain about relatives who never helped but always judged. She thanked me once, briefly, distracted by the oven timer. I told myself that was enough. It always had to be. By the time everyone arrived, the house was full of noise and false warmth. My brother was loud, confident, already telling stories about his plans for the company. My aunts nodded along. My uncles praised his ambition. No one asked about me, even though I'd been running half the operations quietly for years. I watched my father that day more closely than usual. He was tense, laughing too hard, drinking too fast. Every time our eyes almost met, he looked away. Something sat heavy in my chest, but I pushed it down. I'd learned to do that well. We sat for dinner. Plates clinked. Glasses were filled. Turkey was passed around like a symbol of abundance that didn't quite reach everyone equally. I felt it then, a shift in the room, subtle but unmistakable. My brother cleared his throat and stood up, wineglass raised, his smile already practiced. I knew that smile. It was the one he wore when he thought he was winning. As he began to speak, my heart didn't race. It slowed. Years of being overlooked had prepared me for disappointment. Still, there was a small, stubborn part of me that hoped, foolishly, that this time would be different. That maybe, just once, my work would be seen. But hope is dangerous in families like mine. I folded my napkin neatly on my lap, straightened my back, and listened. My brother's voice carried easily over the table, confident and warm, the kind of tone people trusted without question. He thanked everyone for coming, joked about the turkey being dry, and made a show of praising our parents for their wisdom and vision. I watched the way he stood there, feet planted, shoulders back, like the future had already bowed to him. Then he said it. "I'm proud to announce," he began, lifting his glass higher, "that Mom and Dad are officially handing the family business over to me." The room erupted in applause. My aunts clapped enthusiastically. Someone whistled. My mother smiled tightly, her hands folded in front of her plate. My father nodded once, still not looking at me. My brother wasn't finished. He laughed lightly, as if what came next was nothing more than a harmless joke. And as for my sister, he continued, turning his head just enough to acknowledge my existence, "Well, she's decided to do her own thing. So she's getting nothing." The word landed hard. Not shouted. Not whispered. Just dropped casually into the middle of a celebration, as if it didn't carry years of effort, loyalty, and quiet sacrifice inside it. A few people chuckled, unsure if they were supposed to. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Someone murmured, "Oh." No one corrected him. No one interrupted. The silence that followed felt louder than the applause before it. I looked at my parents then. My mother stared at her plate, her fork frozen in midair. My father's jaw tightened, his hand clenched around his glass. Still, he said nothing. That was when the truth finally settled in my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the plan. Memories rushed in without permission. Late nights balancing accounts. Missed vacations. The time I covered payroll out of my own savings so employees wouldn't worry. The way I defended the business when others doubted it, because I believed it was ours. Apparently, it never had been. I felt something strange happen inside me, not anger, not even heartbreak, but clarity. A clean, sharp awareness that cut through the years of hoping. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen. My brother raised his glass again, expecting me to shrink, maybe smile politely, maybe disappear the way I always had. Instead, I reached for my wine. My hand didn't shake. I took a slow sip, letting the coolness ground me, letting the moment stretch just long enough for everyone to notice. My father finally looked at me then. Our eyes met across the table, and in that split second, I saw fear flash through his expression. Not guilt, fear. He knew something the others didn't. I set my glass down carefully and wiped my lips with my napkin. The room waited, breath held, sensing a shift they couldn't name. I leaned back slightly in my chair, calm settling over me like armor, and looked straight at my father. My voice, when I spoke, was steady. Almost gentle. "Should I tell them now," I said, "or do you want to?" The table went completely silent. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Forks hovered midair. Someone coughed and quickly stopped, as if sound itself had become forbidden. All eyes shifted, from me, to my father, and back again. My brother's smile faltered, just slightly, the first crack in his confidence. My father swallowed hard. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the weight of a secret he had hoped would stay buried forever. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. My mother finally looked up, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. "What is she talking about?" my brother asked with a nervous laugh. "Dad?" I didn't wait for permission. I had waited long enough in my life. "Remember the expansion loan 5 years ago?" I said calmly, folding my hands on the table. "The one the bank almost denied because the business didn't meet the requirements?" My father's shoulders slumped. My brother frowned. The relatives leaned in, curiosity replacing celebration. "That loan only went through," I continued, "because the collateral wasn't the business." I paused, letting the words settle. "It was me." A gasp rippled through the room. I explained how my father had come to me quietly back then, voice low, pride bruised. How he asked me to co-sign, to put my name and assets on the line because the bank trusted my credit, my records, my work. How I agreed, without hesitation, because I believed in family. And when the lawyer suggested restructuring ownership for protection, I said, turning my gaze directly to my brother, "Guess whose name went on the land and the operating license?" My brother's face drained of color. "That's not." "It is," my father interrupted, his voice tired, defeated. He rubbed his temples, finally speaking the truth he'd been avoiding. "Legally, she owns it." The room exploded into overlapping voices. Questions, disbelief, accusations. My mother stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. My brother pushed his chair back, standing abruptly, anger replacing arrogance. "You let me announce this," he snapped at my parents. "You let me look like an idiot." I met his gaze evenly. "No," I said softly. "You did that yourself." I stood then, not to dominate the room, but to reclaim myself. I explained how I had kept the business running while everyone praised him. How contracts were signed under my authority. How vendors called me, not him, when things went wrong. "I never wanted to embarrass anyone," I said, my voice steady despite the storm around me. "I just wanted respect. Or honesty." I would have accepted either. My father's eyes filled with regret too late to matter. My brother looked small now, stripped of the future he'd already claimed as his own. "I'm stepping away," I finished. "Effective immediately. The business will be transferred or dissolved, my lawyers will handle it." I wish you all well. I picked up my coat. No shouting followed me. No one stopped me. As I walked out into the cold night air, my hands finally trembled, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. The cold outside felt sharper than it should have, but I welcomed it. It cleared the last traces of that heavy house from my lungs. I stood on the front steps for a moment, breathing in the quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after a truth has been spoken out loud. Behind me, the door stayed closed. No one followed. And strangely, that hurt less than I expected. For weeks after Thanksgiving, my phone stayed mostly silent. A few messages came through, carefully worded apologies from relatives who had laughed at the table, a long voice memo from my mother filled with confusion and guilt, a single angry text from my brother accusing me of betrayal. I didn't respond right away. I needed to hear my own thoughts first. Walking away didn't destroy the business overnight. It weakened slowly, the way it always had without anyone noticing. Vendors asked for me by name. Clients hesitated when I wasn't involved. Decisions stalled. My brother had the title, but not the trust. Not the relationships. Not the quiet knowledge built from years of being the one who stayed late and fixed what others ignored. I didn't celebrate their struggle. That wasn't my revenge. My revenge was peace. I used the settlement from the restructuring to do something I'd never been allowed to do before, choose myself. I started small, consulting at first, helping other businesses clean up the messes they pretended didn't exist. Word spread. People valued my honesty, my work ethic, my refusal to take credit I hadn't earned or give it away to those who hadn't worked for it. For the first time, my success wasn't whispered. It wasn't hidden behind someone else's name. It was mine. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about that dinner. About the girl I was before my brother stood up with his glass, before the word nothing was used like a verdict. I realized something important then: I hadn't walked away with nothing. I walked away with everything that mattered. I took my dignity. I took my skills. I took the strength I had built in silence. My father tried to meet me for coffee once. He apologized, finally, without excuses. I accepted it, not because it fixed the past, but because I no longer needed his approval to move forward. Forgiveness, I learned, is not the same as returning. As for my brother, I wish him well, from a distance. Not every lesson needs to be shared. Some are earned. Now, when I sit at tables, business meetings, dinners with friends, quiet meals alone, I choose my seat deliberately. Not the one I'm given. The one I deserve. And when people ask me about my family, I smile and tell them the truth. I come from a place that taught me exactly who I never wanted to be, and exactly who I had the power to become.